The cold wind whipped through the towering buildings of Seoul, but inside Jaehyun's penthouse, everything was still. He stood by the window, staring out over the city, his thoughts as dark as the sky outside. The penthouse was everything he had ever wanted, luxurious, cold, and distant from the chaos of his past. But on that night, with the lights of Seoul twinkling far below, nothing felt as certain as it should. He was the leader of one of the most powerful mafia organizations in Korea. His power was unmatched, his name whispered in fear, his empire built on loyalty, ruthlessness, and silence. He had it all, or so he thought. Jaehyun's phone buzzed on the sleek glass table, breaking the silence. The message that lit up his screen sent a chill through him. "I wish my black mama gets a husband for New Year." He froze. His pulse quickened. The name on the screen, an unknown number, was enough to make his blood run cold. It was Shaniqua, his ex-wife's daughter, the child he never wanted. His fingers hovered over the phone, unsure of how to react. He'd cut ties with Lila, Shaniqua's mother, years ago. He had buried those memories, buried them deep. The betrayal, the bitterness, the way Lila had walked away, leaving him with nothing but a child who didn't belong in his world. Jaehyun knew better than to let the past come back. He had too much at stake now. The mafia, his business, his position, it all depended on keeping his past locked away, hidden from the world. But this message? This couldn't be ignored. "What do you mean, a husband?" Jaehyun typed, his fingers shaking despite his calm exterior. He hit send before he could think twice. The message was out there now, and with it, all the uncertainty he'd spent years running from. Seconds passed. No response. Jaehyun set the phone down, his mind racing. Why would Shaniqua reach out after all this time? What did she want? What was behind the strange timing of this message? He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, the phone buzzed again. "I want her to be happy, Jaehyun. Please. She needs you." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. She needs you. Jaehyun hadn't heard his name spoken like that in years. His heart thudded in his chest. Could it be? Could Lila, was she alive? The weight of the message settled in. His past, his worst fears, were coming back to haunt him. Shaniqua wasn't just a reminder of what he lost. She was now a lifeline, and a challenge he couldn't refuse. Jaehyun knew one thing for sure, this wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a simple plea for help. There was more to it. And whatever it was, it would change everything. What would you do if someone from your past sent you a message you never expected? Subscribe and drop a comment if you think Jaehyun should ignore the past or face it head on. Jaehyun's phone sat still on the glass table, glowing in the dim light. He couldn't take his eyes off the screen, even as his heart pounded in his chest. The message from Shaniqua hung in the air, its weight suffocating him. She needed him, but why now? Why after all these years? Jaehyun had made sure to sever every tie to Lila and her daughter. That chapter of his life was buried in the past, long before he became the mafia boss, before power and control became the only things that mattered. But now, Shaniqua's text had ripped open a door he'd thought was locked for good. "Why do you need me?" he typed, his fingers hesitant. He sat back, waiting for a response that would come far too soon. His mind raced through the possibilities. What could be so urgent that Shaniqua, who barely knew him anymore, would reach out? His thoughts shifted to Lila, the woman he once loved, and then hated. The woman who had walked out of his life without a word, taking Shaniqua with her. He remembered the days when they were a family, before the bloodshed, before everything had fallen apart. But Lila had never been the same after their last fight. She left him, took their daughter, and vanished. No explanation, no closure. Jaehyun never looked back. He couldn't afford to. But now? Now everything had changed. The phone buzzed. "She's sick, Jaehyun. Her health is failing. The doctors don't know what to do. I know you're not the man I once knew, but she needs you. You were the one who made her laugh. Please, if there's any piece of you that still cares." Jaehyun's heart skipped a beat. Sick? Lila? He hadn't heard from Lila in years. Not a word, not a sign. And now, after all this time, Shaniqua was asking for his help. She was asking him to save someone he thought he'd lost forever. Someone he had buried deep in his past. His hands clenched around the phone, his mind a whirlwind of emotions he wasn't ready to face. He had a reputation to uphold. A kingdom to run. The Mafia. His empire. And yet, Shaniqua's message had cracked something inside him. What was it about her words that made him stop? His pulse quickened as the room seemed to close in around him. There was too much at stake. Too many secrets tied to this woman and her daughter. Jaehyun had moved on. Or at least, that's what he kept telling himself. The phone buzzed again. Meet me. The address is the same as before. I'll be waiting. Jaehyun's breath caught in his throat. The words were familiar, too familiar. The address. The place where it all began. The apartment he'd left behind. His legs moved before he could think. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the penthouse, his mind running wild with questions, but one thought stuck out above the rest. He had to go. He had to face whatever was waiting for him. Jaehyun's steps echoed in the hallway of the old building, each one louder than the last. The door loomed ahead, familiar yet distant. It hadn't changed since the day he left, as if time had forgotten to touch it. His hand hovered over the doorknob, but something inside him hesitated. What was he doing here? He could feel his past pressing against him, Lila, Shaniqua, the life he'd tried to forget. But now, here he was, standing at the doorstep of the woman who had once been everything to him. A faint click from the door broke his thoughts. He pushed it open. Inside, the place was eerily quiet. The faint smell of old furniture and lingering memories filled the air. Jaehyun took a step inside, the weight of what he was about to face hanging like a storm cloud over his head. He wasn't prepared for this, but there was no turning back now. And then he saw her. Shaniqua sat on the worn-out couch, her posture slumped, the years of life etched into her face. She was no longer the little girl he had walked away from all those years ago. She was a young woman now, still full of hurt, but also holding something far deeper. Her eyes locked onto his. She didn't speak, her gaze not pleading, but expecting. Jaehyun froze. There was something about the way she looked at him, something that pulled at his heart. She's gone, Jaehyun, Shaniqua said softly, breaking the silence. The words cut through him like a blade. Gone? Jaehyun didn't know how to respond. He had heard about Lila over the years, rumors, whispers, but to hear it from Shaniqua, to have the finality of those words hit him head-on, was a punch he didn't see coming. His thoughts scrambled, his breath short. You mean? Jaehyun started, but his voice trailed off. He couldn't even finish the sentence. The reality of it was too much. Shaniqua nodded, her voice thick with emotion. She's not coming back, Jaehyun. The words were like a punch to the gut, and Jaehyun stumbled back, his mind racing. Lila was gone? The woman who had once been his world, gone without a trace. And now, all that remained was a letter, a reminder of everything that had been lost. Shaniqua reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him. This, she said, her voice shaky, is all we have left of her. Jaehyun's hand trembled as he unfolded the paper. It was like the past was staring back at him, each fold revealing another piece of a story he wasn't ready to confront. But one question burned in his mind: why now? Jaehyun's eyes were locked on the folded paper in his hands, the fragile corner edges that seemed to hold a lifetime of regret. His mind was racing, his thoughts crashing together like a tidal wave. He hadn't seen Lila in years, but her absence had always been like an open wound. Now, in his hands, there was something tangible, something that felt more like a verdict than a piece of paper. The silence in the room was unbearable. Shaniqua's eyes were fixed on him, searching for something. Answers, maybe, or understanding. But Jaehyun wasn't sure if he had either. The letter was simple, its contents brief. The kind of words you could never forget, no matter how much you wanted to. I've never been able to let go of you, Jaehyun, the letter started. Even after everything, even after all these years, you were the one I could never forget. But I couldn't keep pretending, either. Shaniqua, she needs someone. I can't be the mother she deserves anymore. But you still have a chance to be what she needs. Jaehyun's breath caught in his throat. The words were a slap, but they were also a confession. Lila had known. She had always known. And now, in her final moments, she was putting it all on him. But why? Why hadn't she come back? Jaehyun's grip on the letter tightened. He could feel his pulse in his ears. She needs someone. That line echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. He never asked for this, never wanted to be part of this mess again, but now, Now it was clear that there was no running away from the weight of his past. Shaniqua's voice broke through his thoughts. She said you were the only one who ever made her laugh, Jaehyun. That's what she remembered. It was always you, even when she couldn't say it. Jaehyun stared at the letter again, the room around him growing smaller, the walls closing in. The Mafia boss, the man who had crushed enemies, built empires, and moved mountains, was frozen in place. None of his money, none of his power, could change this moment. The letter was a plea. A final chance. Jaehyun couldn't bring himself to look up at Shaniqua. His mind was still lost in the letter, in Lila's words. It didn't matter how many years had passed. Lila's voice had reached through the cracks in his armor, and now, there was nothing he could do but face the consequences. What was he supposed to do now? You're asking me to take care of her? Jaehyun finally said, his voice hoarse. After all this time, you think I can just pick up where she left off? Shaniqua didn't flinch. I know it's a lot to ask. But you don't have a choice. You were her last hope, Jaehyun. And now, you're mine. Jaehyun was stuck. His heart was still beating too fast, his mind still trying to process the weight of Lila's words. But something else lingered in the air, a feeling he couldn't shake. Was this just a call for help? Or was there something deeper here, something that tied him to Shaniqua more than he could ever understand? Jaehyun stood in the dim light of the old apartment, the weight of the letter still pressing on his chest. It felt like time itself had frozen the moment he read Lila's words. The silence between him and Shaniqua was thick, almost suffocating. He couldn't bring himself to look at her, couldn't bring himself to face the girl who had forced him back into a past he thought was long buried. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his thoughts, but everything was swirling. Lila had asked him to step in. She had asked him to be the one. And now, with her gone, it was clear, there was no choice. The cold, hard truth was that he had to make a decision, but the thought of it made his stomach twist. Shaniqua shifted on the couch, her voice breaking the stillness. You don't have to be scared, Jaehyun. I'm not asking for everything. Just help her be happy. Her words hit him like a slap, but he couldn't ignore the vulnerability behind them. He had seen that same look in Lila's eyes before, the helplessness, the desperation. And now, it was Shaniqua's turn to bear that weight. Jaehyun finally looked at her, his gaze hardening. You think it's that simple? You think I can just step in and play the part of the father, again? That's not who I am, Shaniqua. I can't just turn that on. Shaniqua didn't flinch. She sat up straighter, her eyes unwavering. I know, but you're the only one who ever mattered to her. Don't you get it? If you could just be there for her, maybe it would be enough. Jaehyun's chest tightened as her words sank in. Maybe it would be enough. The idea lingered in the air, too heavy to ignore. Could it be enough? Could he fill the space Lila left behind, even if it meant facing the ghosts of his past? For a moment, Jaehyun wanted to walk out, to leave everything behind, his empire, his responsibilities, and the guilt that clawed at his insides. But when he looked at Shaniqua, all he saw was a girl who had lost her mother, a girl who had no one else. Shaniqua? Jaehyun's voice softened, but there was still steel in his words. I don't know what you're asking of me, but I'll tell you this. I'm not going to be the man your mother wanted me to be. That's not who I am anymore. Shaniqua's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just nodded, accepting his words in a way Jaehyun couldn't fully understand. What do you need from me, then? Jaehyun asked, his voice low. Tell me what you need, and I'll see what I can do. The words felt like a lie, but they were the only words he could say. The truth was, he didn't know if he was capable of doing this. But when he looked at Shaniqua, so much like her mother, with her sharp eyes and quiet pain, he couldn't walk away. She took a breath, looking down at her hands before speaking again. I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't leave her, not like you left before. Not like you abandoned her and me. She doesn't have much time left. Jaehyun's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What's wrong with her? Shaniqua looked at him, the truth hanging between them. She's sick, Jaehyun. Really sick. And I don't know how much longer we have. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. His mind raced. What did he even know about Lila's health? Why had she kept this from him? Why hadn't he known? Jaehyun opened his mouth, but no words came. He couldn't answer her. Not yet. Jae-hyun's mind raced as he walked away from the apartment, the weight of Shaniqua's words still fresh in his mind. She's sick. Those words echoed through his thoughts like a broken record. His chest tightened, and for the first time in years, he felt a strange sense of responsibility pulling him back into the life he thought he'd left behind. But could he do this? Could he really walk into the chaos that was Lila's world once more and fix something he didn't even know how to fix? The city lights of Seoul glimmered beneath him as he stood at the edge of the balcony, the cool wind brushing against his face. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Shaniqua, but Jae-hyun didn't have the energy to look at it right now. It was hard enough trying to figure out the next steps without the constant reminders of a past he didn't want to face. He walked back inside the penthouse, his mind still locked in turmoil. The Mafia boss in him was ready to shut it all down, to walk away and leave the past buried. But the man he used to be, the man who loved Lila, was still alive somewhere deep inside. And that man didn't just walk away when things got tough. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Jinwoo, his loyal right-hand man, stood there, his usual calm demeanor replaced with something more serious. Jae-hyun had been dreading this moment. He couldn't afford to ignore the organization's problems, not now. What's going on? Jae-hyun asked, trying to push aside the chaos in his mind. There's a situation with one of the other families, boss, Jinwoo said, his voice tight with urgency. They're making moves, and we've already lost some ground in the North District. Jae-hyun ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. Not now, Jinwoo. We'll handle them later. But, boss, Jinwoo started, his expression faltering, as if he was about to push for an answer. I said, later. Jae-hyun cut him off, his voice colder than he intended. He turned away, ignoring the sudden tension in the room. Jinwoo hesitated but nodded, backing out of the room without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, and Jae-hyun was left alone again, standing in the quiet of his penthouse. The silence felt deafening. Everything felt too still. The Mafia leader inside him told him to focus, to push everything else aside and keep the power at the forefront. But the man who used to care, who used to love, couldn't ignore the pain in his chest. What was he supposed to do? Jae-hyun walked to his desk, grabbing the phone that had caused all this chaos in the first place. He stared at the screen for a long moment, the messages from Shaniqua still flashing in his mind. Shaniqua had asked him to be the man he once was. To show up. To be there. But Jae-hyun had never been good at being that person. He typed a response, his fingers trembling slightly, though he tried to mask it. I'll be there tomorrow, he wrote. It wasn't a promise. It was a decision. A dangerous one, but one he knew he couldn't undo. The phone buzzed one more time, and this time, Jae-hyun didn't hesitate. He opened the message, his eyes narrowing as he read it. You better be ready, Jae-hyun. There's more to the story than you think. A chill ran down his spine. More to the story? What did that mean? And why did Shaniqua sound like she knew something he didn't? The next day, Jae-hyun arrived at the address Shaniqua had sent him. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Jae-hyun wasn't sure what to say. How could he ask for answers when the truth felt like a knife buried deep in his chest? Shaniqua handed him the folded piece of paper, her hands shaking. Jae-hyun took it, his fingers cold as he unfolded it. It was a letter. A letter from Lila. His eyes scanned the words, but they felt distant, foreign even. It was as if a woman he had once known had written these words to a stranger. To a man who had no place in her world anymore. Jae-hyun, I know this will be the last time you hear from me, and maybe that's for the best. You've built your empire, and I've built mine. Our lives were never meant to last forever. But I'm not sorry for the time we had. What we had was real, in its own way. But I have to let go. And so do you. Jae-hyun's throat tightened as he read the words. He couldn't breathe. Lila had known all along, hadn't she? She had known this would end. And yet, she had left him with nothing but this letter. No closure, no explanation, just an ending, as clean and cold as the apartment around him. Shaniqua watched him, her face unreadable. She wanted you to know. She wanted to say goodbye. But I don't think she thought you'd come. Jae-hyun didn't look up. He couldn't. He felt his heart beating faster, as if it were trying to break free from the weight of the past. He knew what he needed to do. He needed to let go. But there was something still pulling him back, something in the letter that lingered. But why send it now? Jaehyun's voice cracked. Why after all these years? Shaniqua stood up, walking toward the window and looking out at the city below. She didn't want you to be alone. Not at the end. Not with everything you've built. She still cared about you, Jaehyun. She wanted you to know that she didn't forget. Jaehyun felt a lump form in his throat. He stood up abruptly, throwing the letter onto the table. She left. She left me and took everything. She made her choice. And you made yours, Shaniqua fired back, turning to face him. You think I don't know what you've been doing all these years? Hiding behind your empire, too proud to admit you miss her? You don't get to play the victim now, Jaehyun. There was a long silence, one that neither of them wanted to break. But the truth hung in the air like a storm, ready to erupt. Jaehyun closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of Shaniqua's words sinking in. I didn't want to be like this. I didn't want to be this man. But the world didn't leave me a choice. Shaniqua's eyes softened for a brief moment. You still have a choice. You always have. Jaehyun sat in the darkened apartment, the letter from Lila now lying untouched on the coffee table. His mind raced. The words she had written echoed in his mind, but they weren't the only thing haunting him. The memories, the ghosts of what he once had with Lila, filled every corner of the room. It was like trying to escape your own shadow, a battle that was lost before it even started. He stared at the city lights outside, his empire glowing beneath him, but it felt like nothing compared to the emptiness inside. Was this his fate now? To be a man who built everything but never could hold on to anything that mattered? Lila had left, and now it seemed like even Shaniqua was slipping away, taking with her the last fragments of Jaehyun's past. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. His heart leapt. But when he saw the message, his stomach dropped. Jaehyun, I need to talk to you. There's something important you don't know. I've been keeping it from you. Please, just meet me at the old warehouse on 7th Street tonight. I'll explain everything. Shaniqua. Jaehyun's mind whirled. She hadn't been at the apartment long before he left. What was it she had to tell him that couldn't wait? His first instinct was to ignore it, he had enough trouble on his plate. But this wasn't just any message. It was the kind that felt like it came with a warning. For a second, Jaehyun debated, the weight of the world pressing against his chest. He didn't need more drama. He didn't need to dig up old ghosts. Yet, something in his gut told him that whatever Shaniqua had to say could change everything. Jaehyun stood up, his decision made. He couldn't afford to ignore this. The old warehouse wasn't far from the city's edge, tucked away in a forgotten part of town. The building had always been a place of secrets, and it had served as the backdrop for deals, betrayals, and shady business long before Jaehyun had come into power. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd left his past behind, but his past seemed to be catching up to him, step by painful step. When Jaehyun arrived, the place was eerily silent. No cars, no lights, just the cold hum of the city far in the distance. He stepped out of the car, his gaze scanning the darkened corners of the building. The warehouse loomed above him like a shadow, and Jaehyun couldn't help but wonder if it had always been this menacing. Or if he had just never noticed before. He walked towards the door, his footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. As he pushed open the creaking door, the dim light inside illuminated Shaniqua, standing alone in the center of the room. Her eyes were red, her posture tense. She hadn't expected him to come, that much was clear. Shaniqua, Jaehyun said, his voice low, as if testing the waters. What is this about? Shaniqua didn't speak at first. She simply handed him a manila envelope. Jaehyun raised an eyebrow, confused but intrigued. He opened it slowly, pulling out a set of photos, each one darker than the last. The first was a picture of Lila. The second was of Shaniqua, her face bruised and swollen. Jaehyun's heart skipped. The third was of a man he didn't recognize. But it was the final picture that made his blood run cold. It was a picture of Jaehyun himself, taken from behind. But there was something more, he wasn't alone. In the corner of the shot, a shadow loomed, unmistakable. Jaehyun's breath caught in his throat. Who took these? He demanded, his voice low with a hint of anger. Shaniqua hesitated, then looked at him with a coldness that was new to her. The truth is, Jaehyun, your enemies have been watching you. Watching us. They've been planning this for years. And now, they're coming for you. Jaehyun's pulse quickened. What do you mean? The man in that last photo, he's been working with the other families. They're closing in, and they want more than just your empire. They want to erase every part of your past, Jaehyun. He felt the weight of her words sink in, a heavy dread pooling in his chest. It wasn't just business anymore. It was personal. Why now, Shaniqua? Jaehyun demanded, stepping closer. Why come to me with this now? Shaniqua's eyes flickered with pain, and for a moment, she looked like the scared little girl Jaehyun had once known. Because I need you. This isn't just about the family business. I need you to protect us. You owe me that much. We're all that's left of her. Of Lila. Jaehyun stood frozen in the cold warehouse, the photos still clutched in his hands. His mind was racing, but there was only one thought that kept echoing. Why now? After all these years, after everything he had done to bury his past, it was finally resurfacing in the most brutal way. Shaniqua's voice broke through his thoughts. You need to understand, Jaehyun, this isn't just about business anymore. It's about us, about me. My mom is gone, and you're the only person who can help me. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Jaehyun's chest tightened. Lila. The woman who had once been his everything, the one who had walked out of his life without a single word of explanation, was now gone. And all that was left was a daughter he barely knew, standing in front of him with the weight of the world on her shoulders. I didn't ask for this, Jaehyun muttered, his voice bitter. His empire, his wealth, his control, he had fought for all of it, pushing aside his past. But now, with Lila's death and Shaniqua's desperate plea, he couldn't escape the truth any longer. You don't have a choice, Jaehyun. It's already too late. The other families, they've been planning this for months. They've been watching, waiting, and now they want to bring you down. They'll destroy everything you've worked for. They'll destroy me too, Shaniqua said, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Jaehyun clenched his jaw. I'm not a charity, Shaniqua. I don't help people just because they ask. I have my own problems. Shaniqua took a step forward, ignoring his cold words. I know you're not that man anymore. But somewhere deep inside, I know you still care. I know you're still the man who made her laugh. The man who made her believe in something better. Jaehyun swallowed hard. The memories of Lila came rushing back, her laughter, her warmth, the way she could melt all his walls with a single smile. But that was before everything fell apart. What do you want me to do? Jaehyun asked, his voice raw with frustration. He knew he couldn't walk away. He couldn't let her fall into the hands of the enemy. Not when he had the power to stop it. Shaniqua handed him a phone. I've been keeping tabs on them, Jaehyun. I have everything they've been planning. You need to make contact with this person. They're your only lead. Jaehyun stared at the phone, the name flashing on the screen. Jin Park. The name meant nothing to him. But there was no mistaking the urgency in Shaniqua's eyes. I'm not trusting anyone right now, Jaehyun said, slipping the phone into his pocket. But I'll look into it. Shaniqua let out a shaky breath, her relief almost palpable. You can't do this alone, Jaehyun. You need to let people in. Jaehyun turned to leave, his mind already calculating his next move. But as he reached the door, he paused. He looked back at Shaniqua. You have one chance to prove you're not lying to me. Don't make me regret this. Her eyes softened. I won't, I swear. Jaehyun stepped into the night, the cold air biting at his skin. The danger was real. The enemy was already making its move, and Jaehyun was standing in the eye of the storm. The only question now was whether he could protect everything he had built, and whether he was willing to sacrifice what little humanity he had left to save those he had once loved. Jaehyun's phone buzzed again, cutting through the tense silence of his penthouse. He hadn't moved much since his meeting with Shaniqua, the weight of everything pressing down on him. He was a man who had built an empire, a kingdom of wealth and control, but here he was, trapped by the ghosts of his past and the desperate plea of a young woman who once meant nothing to him. His eyes flicked to the message. It was from Shaniqua. It's done. They're moving in now. I don't know how much time we have. His pulse quickened. The words sent a shiver down his spine. They're moving in now. What did that mean? The enemy had been circling for weeks, but he hadn't expected them to act so quickly. And now, as if the universe were mocking him, he was stuck between two worlds. The ruthless Mafia boss who controlled it all, and the vulnerable man he once was when Lila was by his side. His fingers hovered over the keys. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to act. Jae-hyun grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and stormed out, his mind already working through the plan. Jinwoo, his ever-loyal right-hand man, was already waiting outside. "Boss, we've received intel. The other families have coordinated. This isn't just about territory anymore. They're coming for you." Jae-hyun's eyes hardened. "I know. It's time to end this." As they climbed into the car, Jae-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something much darker than he'd ever anticipated. This wasn't just a battle for power, it was about his legacy, his name, his entire future. And if he didn't act fast, everything would crumble. "Where are we going?" Jinwoo asked, his voice steady. Jae-hyun didn't answer right away. His mind was focused on the task ahead, the final confrontation that was waiting for him. He knew that this moment could change everything, his empire, his life, and the woman who had unknowingly become the center of it all. Shaniqua had come back into his life when he least expected it, and now, whether he liked it or not, he was bound to her and her cause. "Take us to the docks," Jae-hyun finally said, his voice firm. "It ends there." The car sped through the dark streets, the city lights flickering as they passed by. Jae-hyun's mind flashed back to the night Lila had walked away, taking Shaniqua with her. He'd thought that was the end of it. He'd thought he could forget about her, forget about the family that once made him feel something he hadn't been able to feel since, something raw, something real. But now, Lila was gone. And Shaniqua, the last thread tying him to his past, had pulled him back into a world of danger and impossible choices. As they neared the docks, Jae-hyun's phone buzzed again. It was Shaniqua. "They're here. They've got people everywhere. Be careful." Jae-hyun's grip tightened around the phone. This was it. There would be no turning back now. He looked at Jinwoo, his trusted companion. "We take them down. No mercy." Jinwoo nodded, already preparing himself for the fight ahead. Jae-hyun could feel the adrenaline building, a familiar rush. But this time, there was something more, something personal. This wasn't just about business anymore. It wasn't just about power. It was about family, about loyalty, about everything he had lost. The car screeched to a halt, and Jae-hyun stepped out. The cold night air hit him like a slap. He didn't look back at Jinwoo, didn't need to. He knew what they were facing. It was time to make the hardest decision of his life. Would he save his empire at any cost, or was there still a piece of him willing to risk it all for something that resembled love? The night was about to get even darker. What would you do in Jae-hyun's shoes? Would you choose power over love, or sacrifice it all for family? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next chapter. The docks were eerily quiet, as if the night itself held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jae-hyun's footsteps echoed on the cracked concrete as he moved towards the entrance. His mind raced through 1,000 thoughts, none of them calming the storm brewing in his chest. His empire was being tested in ways he never expected, and tonight would be the deciding moment. He glanced over at Jinwoo, his ever-loyal right-hand man, who was already scanning the surroundings. Jae-hyun's mind was already 3 steps ahead, he had to be. Rival families had been closing in on him for months. Territory, power, control, all of it had been at risk, but now, with Lila's death hanging like a shadow, and Shaniqua's unexpected return, nothing made sense anymore. "Boss," Jinwoo spoke, his voice low, "I don't trust the timing. They've planned this for too long." Jae-hyun nodded, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the dimly lit docks. He'd made his reputation by being calculated, but tonight, everything was different. "I know." His voice was steady, but underneath the calm facade, his mind was a whirlwind. He could feel the walls closing in on him. Every decision, every move would matter tonight. His enemies weren't just fighting for territory, they were fighting to erase him, to erase everything about his past. A low hum of engines reached his ears, the sound of an approaching convoy. Jae-hyun's grip tightened around the handle of his gun, his knuckles white against the cold metal. The plan was simple. Take out the leaders, eliminate the threats, and keep the empire standing. No mercy, no hesitation. But what if this wasn't just about power anymore? Shaniqua's words haunted him, "She needs you." The very words that had pulled him out of his empire and dragged him into a past he thought he could leave behind. The past was catching up, and now, here he was, stuck between protecting his legacy and facing the man he used to be, the man who loved Lila. The convoy skidded to a halt, breaking his thoughts. The headlights cast long shadows across the dock, silhouettes of men emerging from the vehicles. Jaehyun's heart thudded in his chest. He had been ready for this, but now, standing in the quiet before the storm, doubt crept in. "Stay sharp," Jaehyun muttered, stepping forward, his movements calculated. The rival families were not going to back down, they had been waiting for this moment. Jaehyun had too much at stake to let them win. But was this still about the business? Or was it something deeper? A voice broke the silence, low, gruff, and filled with menace. "You're not leaving here tonight, Jaehyun. The families have spoken." Jaehyun's gaze flicked toward the man who stepped forward. It was the leader of the northern faction, a man whose name was whispered with fear. But tonight, his presence was nothing more than a challenge. A challenge that Jaehyun was ready to face. "Is that so?" Jaehyun's voice was calm, controlled, but underneath, there was an edge. This was personal now. This wasn't just business. He wasn't the cold Mafia boss anymore. A part of him, the man who had loved and lost, had returned. But would it be enough to win this fight? The air felt thick as both sides sized each other up, tension hanging like a heavy fog. Jaehyun's pulse quickened. Every decision, every word, could either shatter his empire or restore it. But it wasn't just about the empire anymore. Not when Shaniqua's words, and the truth about Lila, echoed in his mind. Could he destroy his enemies and keep his humanity intact? "Let's end this," Jaehyun said, his voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. Jinwoo stepped forward, signaling the men behind them to prepare. The enemy leader smirked, raising a hand to his men. "We'll see about that." And then, everything exploded. Gunfire rang out, deafening and relentless. Jaehyun moved with practiced precision, taking out the first wave of soldiers. His heart pounded as adrenaline coursed through his veins. He wasn't just fighting for his empire anymore, he was fighting for survival. The stakes had never been higher. The battle raged on, each moment more intense than the last. Jaehyun's movements were instinctive, calculated, as if his body knew what to do without him even thinking. But every shot, every swing, felt different. More personal, more real. As the last of the rival forces began to retreat, Jaehyun's gaze turned to Jinwoo. His right-hand man was breathing heavily, eyes scanning the scene. "We've won," Jinwoo said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Jaehyun didn't answer immediately. His mind was elsewhere, on the message he'd received earlier. Why now? Why had Shaniqua reached out? Was there something more to this than just family drama? Before Jaehyun could speak, his phone buzzed again. He hesitated for only a moment before answering. Jaehyun, the voice on the other end was tense, unfamiliar. "You don't know everything. There's more to this than you think." Jaehyun's chest tightened. He didn't need this right now. His enemies had been dealt with, but what did this mean? "More to this? Who is this?" Jaehyun demanded, his tone hard. But the voice didn't answer. Instead, the line went dead, leaving Jaehyun holding the phone, a cold pit forming in his stomach. The battle might have ended, but Jaehyun knew one thing for sure: the war was far from over. Ahyun stood alone in the cold, his heart racing as the echoes of gunfire faded into the distance. The dust settled over the now deserted docks, and for the first time in hours, there was a silence so thick it almost felt unnatural. His breathing was slow but heavy, each inhale filled with the weight of what had just happened. His empire, his very existence, had been challenged tonight. And yet, as he stood there amidst the wreckage, something felt missing. Something deeper than the battle. Something he hadn't expected to face. Shaniqua. The thought of her, sitting alone in the dim apartment just hours earlier, plagued his mind. "She needs you," her words echoed in his head, a haunting reminder of the ties to the past he had long tried to bury. Jaehyun had come here for one reason: control. To fight off the rivals threatening his empire. But the battle wasn't just about power anymore. It wasn't just about keeping his Mafia family at the top. For the first time, it was about the legacy he could leave behind. And the ties that bound him to a woman who had walked away years ago. Lila. His phone buzzed again, jerking him out of his thoughts. He glanced down at the screen. Shaniqua. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. The battle was over. The enemies had been dealt with. But something in him wouldn't let the phone slip back into his pocket. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was something deeper, something he wasn't ready to admit yet. He pressed the screen, reading the message. It's done. They're retreating. You saved us. But you still don't know the full story. Jae-hyun's heart skipped a beat. The full story. Was there more to this than just what had happened tonight? Was there something else he didn't understand? Before he could respond, a call came through from an unknown number. His stomach tightened, and an uneasy feeling crept into his chest. He answered, voice steady but cautious. Who is this? Jae-hyun's voice was low, commanding. The voice on the other end was urgent, but laced with something deeper, fear. Jae-hyun, listen to me. You don't know everything. The family you thought you destroyed years ago? They've been waiting for this moment. And they're not done with you. Not yet. Jae-hyun's pulse quickened. Every muscle in his body tensed. His enemies had already made their move tonight. Who was this? And what were they talking about? Who are you? Jae-hyun asked again, his patience running thin. I was one of them. One of the people you betrayed. But this isn't about revenge anymore. They're coming for you, Jae-hyun. The last move is yet to come. Jae-hyun's mind raced. The last move? His enemies? The rivals? Who were they talking about? Had tonight's battle only been the beginning? The voice continued, the truth about your family, about Lila, it's more than you think. Everything you've built, it's all connected. Jae-hyun's head throbbed as the words hit him like a tidal wave. The truth about Lila? He had thought everything with her was in the past. The betrayal, the pain, the loss. But now, with these cryptic words, everything felt like it was coming apart. A sudden realization hit him. He wasn't just dealing with rival families anymore. This was bigger, far bigger. Someone was playing a game with him, one he hadn't been prepared for. You need to meet me, the voice said, urgency lacing their words. Now, Jae-hyun. It's the only way to stop this. Jae-hyun's mind snapped into action. Who was this person? What did they know? The pieces of the puzzle were scattered, and he had to fit them together fast. I'll meet you. Where? Jae-hyun's voice was cold, determined. The voice gave an address, one Jae-hyun knew all too well. It was the last place he ever wanted to be. The old warehouse, the one tied to his past. He didn't hesitate. He didn't have time. Jae-hyun's footsteps echoed in the quiet as he moved towards his car, the weight of everything pulling him down. There was no going back now. The drive felt longer than it was, the roads blurring beneath the headlights. Jae-hyun's mind raced with thoughts, memories, and questions he didn't have answers to. But one thing was certain, this was the final test. Everything he had done in his life, every decision, every betrayal, every move, had led him here. The old warehouse loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, as he pulled up to the entrance. He stepped out of the car, his senses heightened. Tonight, everything was coming full circle. Inside, the warehouse was as cold and empty as it had always been. The shadows seemed to stretch farther than they should, and the air was thick with tension. Jae-hyun moved cautiously, his every step measured, every sound amplified in the stillness. And then he saw them. Shaniqua. She was standing in the middle of the room, her face hard, her body tense. She was holding something in her hand. Jae-hyun's heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was. A letter. The same letter. The one from Lila. What is this? Jae-hyun asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Shaniqua didn't answer immediately. She stepped toward him, her eyes locked onto his. There was something different about her now, stronger, more determined. The girl he had once abandoned had grown into someone capable of facing her own battles. It's time you knew the truth, she said, her voice steady, though there was a crack of emotion in it. Jae-hyun took the letter, his hands trembling. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the words that seemed to haunt him. Jae-hyun, I know this will be the last time you hear from me, but there's something you need to understand. The families you've been fighting for, the empire you've built, it's not just your legacy. It's mine too. You thought I walked away from you because I didn't care, but that's not true. I had to leave because I was protecting something greater than both of us. Jae-hyun's breath hitched as he read the words, a weight pressing down on his chest. You weren't the only one with enemies, Jae-hyun. I've kept the truth from you, but now it's time. The past isn't over. It never was. You have to fight for everything now. For her. For Shaniqua. Because what's coming isn't just a battle for power. It's a battle for everything you've lost, and everything you stand to lose. Jaehyun looked up at Shaniqua. Is this true? Shaniqua nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. She was protecting us. You. She never stopped loving you, Jaehyun. The world seemed to slow around him. All the years of pain, betrayal, and loss rushed forward in a single moment. The weight of it all, of everything he had been running from, finally sank in. You can still make it right, Shaniqua said softly, breaking the silence. Jaehyun's mind raced, his heart heavy with regret. But he also knew this, the game wasn't over. I'm not the man I used to be, Jaehyun said quietly. But I'll fight. For you. For her. The final choice had been made. Jaehyun wasn't just fighting for power anymore. He was fighting for family, for redemption, for the future. What would you do if you were Jaehyun? Would you go after the empire you've built, or would you protect the family that was torn apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the next part. This story might be over, but the impact of the choices Jaehyun made will last forever.